Guys, I want to welcome you to our first episode of season 6 of the Franchise Advisory Board, where we bring in experts from the franchise community, like my friend Raphael here from Easy Assist, to talk about key things that you can do to build a memorable and a scaling franchise brand. And Raphael, he's the co-founder and CEO of Easy Assist. Thanks for joining us today, Raphael.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Great to be here. I've been looking forward to this. I know, one of the things I want to lead off by is, every time I've met you and we've built a relationship and I'm just so eager to build it further. Uh, the Maya Angelou quote comes to mind, right? Where she says, it's not about what you say to people, it's not about what you do, it's about how you make them feel. I just want to give you massive kudos on that. That's what comes to mind every time I think about you, and not just you, but your organization, right? So thank you for that culture that you've built and putting out in franchising, and it's an honor to be chatting with you today.
Oh, wow. Well, unexpected praise. I appreciate that, Raphael.
I mean it.
Well, yeah, well, thank you. I can tell. Let me return fire and tell people a little bit of why you're here and why I think you're freaking awesome. So, you guys, we're going to learn a lot today from Raphael. So he's got a background in industrial engineering, got an MBA, right? That's exciting. But what's more exciting, he spent over 15 years working with large multinational organizations to do technology transformations. Worked with big four consulting firms, guys. It's not like podunk stuff. He's been all over the world doing this, and he's been leveraging that now with Easy Assist to bring leading AI and automation tools to the marketplace to help franchise brands scale. He's been in 40 countries. He's played in high school. He played 4 different sports. In fact, I want to know what they are next time we get together. He was a lifeguard in Atlanta while he was doing his undergrad, and his claim to fame is he was actually a lifeguard for Michael Phelps. So put that into perspective, guys. Even Michael Phelps needs a lifeguard. And then he's now, most importantly, I think he's been married for years, and he's got a pair of a boy-girl twins that are 6, and being a dad's really critical to him. And I think if you know Raphael, you'll know, yeah, like this is him. He really cares about family and has deep ties into that. So now let me stop talking. Raphael, would you tell us a little bit more about Easy Assist, about yourself, and then we're going to jump into our topic about AI. And this we talk about this all the time everywhere, but a real deep dive into what are brands actually using AI for today and how are they moving the needle with it. So before we get to that, tell us all about Easy Assist and yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, no, thank you for that very kind intro. And I think likewise, right, with being twin dads is a fun job, and being leading technology companies is also fun. So we share that in common. Well, look, let me actually break it down from the perspective of being an industrial engineer. I'm a bit of a nerd, right? I'm a nerd for data. I'm a nerd for process. I'm a nerd from systems. That's kind of how I'm wired, and a lot of my thinking is systems thinking. And so that's where it starts, Dave. For many years, as I worked in consulting across those different firms and had the privilege of just doing different projects across many different industries, I observed something interesting about knowledge management as a sector, right? When you do all of these large scale transformations, where there's process changing, people changing, new systems, new approaches to executing, and change management is so imperative. Knowledge is critical to that transformation success, right? But for decades, the thesis around knowledge has bugged me a little bit, right? Where the thesis has always been centralization of knowledge and data. The idea that if you bring all of your knowledge together into one hub, magically it all clicks, it works, people know where to find it and access it, and it works. But we all know that doesn't really work, right? Any organization you've been a part of, I've been a part of, there is a lot of tools in the tech stack, and for good reason. And when you have that one question about, hey, where do I find that information or that version of that file or that thing that someone sent me, it's really hard to do in that moment, and there's tons of support burden around it. So in that 2022 kind of period, I was thinking deeply about this problem. I have two great co-founders, one of whom is my closest friend, Shrey. We met at our MBA over a decade before starting this business. So he and I started to tackle this problem. We said, like, we really need to do something about this. It can't just be SharePoints, that take 6 months to stand up and no one really uses. So as we were thinking about this problem and truly trying to build a better SharePoint, ChatGPT comes out, right? Generative AI takes the shape that it did. Large language models took the shape that it did. And suddenly we had an inflection point where we're like, okay, this is interesting, where we're at a point in time where we can rethink this problem statement, right? Instead of looking at it as a centralization of knowledge and data problem, could we look at this as an access to data and knowledge problem,
Mhm.
right? If with this new technology we could make it as simple as just text messaging anything that you wanted from across the tech stack and you got it within seconds, would you really care about where it's organized, how it's organized, what file, what format? The answer is typically no, right?
Mhm.
So we're like, okay, this is a very interesting insight. Now, how do we think about business models or industries where this could be really helpful? Because it could be broadly helpful, but where is it a bleeding problem? So we did a insanely nerdy exercise. We went to a whiteboard. We did a 2 by 2 matrix on the whiteboard. We said on the x-axis, let's think about factors that impact knowledge within a business, right? Things like where there's high attrition rates or high training requirements, things where process and knowledge is changing all the time. On the y-axis, we said, let's think about industries or business models where knowledge is at the core of how they operate and succeed, right? Your traditional consulting, your healthcare, your law all comes up high, lots of data intensive work that they do. But franchising as a business model came up really high, right? Because if you think about a franchise business, you're in the business of creating clones of yourselves. How do you
Mhm.
do that? It's your knowledge, it's your ops manual, your training video, your marketing assets, that compliance documents that everyone needs to follow.
Mhm.
But then when you look at that x-axis, massive amounts of attrition, continuously new innovations, new process, new marketing campaigns, new tools in the toolkit as you evolve. So there's tons of turnover, right? So there's a captive audience that needs this knowledge, but it's hard to consistently access it. That was our one big aha to say, okay, well, this could sounds like an industry where knowledge is important. We seem to have found this gap where this new technology could help. How do we go and validate whether this could be useful? And I'll transition into the AI thing soon, but the key thing that happened was, when we said in Jan 2023, we needed to figure out whether this matters and people would pay attention. We pretended to be franchisees. We went out to two franchise expos in Toronto. We went booth by booth and spoke to different franchisors, and we heard the same story over and over again, right? One is you ask the franchisor, hey, if I become a franchisee of your system, how will you support me? We have all of this tech stack, right? We have a knowledge system, a learning system, a CRM, and ERP, there's an FMS, there's intranets, there's email newsletters, social channels. The list kind of goes on. But then you look around the trade show floor and it's not the most tech savvy audience. They just want a business that they can trust and learn and execute. And then it's like, no, I don't want to deal with all of that. Can I just call someone or access support? Absolutely, you can, but then you dig into the ratios, and the numbers are in the best case 1:30, but in the average case 1:50, right? Where there's one FPC or support person for every 50 locations as you scale.
Yeah.
That was our big aha to be like, okay, we have a problem that AI is squarely poised to solve. That transitions into us building Easy Assist, right? And in a
Mhm.
nutshell, what we've built is an AI support and ticketing platform that's purpose built for franchisees, where we integrate directly into the entire tech stack. So we're not a data lake, we're not a file management system. We pull data directly from source. So whether you use a SharePoint, a Canva, a ClientTether, a FranConnect, a Delightry, wherever there's useful information, we're pulling all of that information. It's a multimodal system, so PDFs, Excels, PowerPoints, web pages, you name it. The AI is trained on all of that natively, and it's continuously learning from source by doing incremental scraping. So anytime there's something that changes, it learns from it. And then on the other side, we said we really need franchisees to use this, right? Let's not build yet another tool that they need to learn and train all of their staff. So we deployed the AI agent into all of the things that they used to, right? So if you're used to sending a text for help, text the AI. If you're sending an email, email the AI. It lives on Slack, Teams, Google Chat. There's a web app. There's a Chrome extension. So wherever they're used to going, they go to it, ask questions day or night, and we're deflecting over 70% of all of the questions that franchisees are asking franchisor.
Well,
The key though is human in the loop, right? We've guardrailed it to all the franchise data. This is not a general web tool. So then whenever the AI doesn't have an answer, it'll never make anything up. It says, hey, I don't have it. Would you like me to loop in your support team through a ticketing system? The user says yes, and the right person gets looped in. They respond to it. And you can even train the AI on that ticket resolution, right? So over time, it's getting smarter, and you're getting the insights on our dashboard in terms of what do people care about? How well is my content doing? Where are the gaps, right? So that's the long story of how we kind of got to Easy Assist, Dave. But it's an interesting one because it's underpinned in actual franchisee problem around support.
yeah. Well, I love that you're purpose built for the industry as well, which means you've already tackled, like many haven't, right? The ability to handle, parent-child, multi-tier data structures, different access points for FBCs versus owners. Like I love it. But you guys are living kind of on the inside of how are brands leveraging AI, like, and you said something I want to go back and reiterate that you're helping brands right now reduce the amount of questions their franchise owners ask their home office team by 70%. And I
Yeah.
know
The
from our
exact average is
conversation,
about 74. Yeah.
yeah, 74%. And I know that some of them it's a lot higher than that. So, how are you seeing these brands now start to really like take advantage of that? Because that's if you think about the volume, if every question takes 5 minutes to answer, and there are 100 franchise owners, which means you probably have about 500 questions a month. Like, think about the volume of removing 350 out of the 500 questions from your team's burden. So how are the franchise brands reacting to just having that much free time, that much more time than they used to have to be
Absolutely.
proactive and engage?
Yeah, look, it really, franchise business coach or performance coach, I think is one of the most critical roles in franchising.
Mhm.
And, having 50 to 70% of that time answer the same repetitive questions from across the system when data exists, that's not ideal. So essentially, we freed that up. So what it allows the franchisor to do is two important things, right? One is as you're thinking about scaling as a franchisor and thinking about your own margins and how are you going to be poised for scale, making sure that you're able to tap into these amazing FBCs or phenomenal resources, but then extending that ratio of how many units they can take on, that's huge, right? So the ROI is definitely there. But more importantly, the insights, Dave. It's actually what's fascinating is very often you see in brands, you don't realize what the franchisee really cares about, right? At scale, right? You're getting all of these data points, it's fragmented, it's hidden in text messages and emails. If you have a ticketing system, maybe there's tickets. But now you're suddenly starting to see it at an aggregate level. There's brands, for example, when we rolled this out, they realized very quickly that budgeting was a key issue for them. It wasn't even on their radar. But enough
Mhm.
franchisees felt comfortable talking to an AI where it's not a person, there's no ego, there's no judgment, where I'm going to ask it all of these questions about budgeting, which I was scared maybe to ask my franchisor. And suddenly they now have a training plan, right? Or a training roadmap where they're like, okay, well, this is the critical thing that we need to focus on. So they do that. There's brands that realized that marketing campaigns were just being missed, right? People didn't even realize it. So we built an announcements feature. So you're like, okay, well, if people are not only about what they're asking, but it's about what they're not asking. So they're not asking, this is a good indication for me to go and reiterate. So now announce that, and it goes through all of the channels that they used to. The best part is they can ask questions about it. So now you
Mhm.
can go and reinforce that behavior, etc. So that's the power unlock that's happened. And the other case study, which I love to share, is the one with Decalash, where they had a pretty massive technology shift that, from an ERP perspective, that they were going through, dreading that shift, right? Imagine that cutover that happens. Suddenly now you have hundreds of franchisees and all of their staff that need to adopt it, and the support burden that comes with that, and all of the technical questions that come with that. What we did is we went and integrated directly into that vendors' FAQs, their training, their YouTube videos, all of the how-tos. And in the first 2 weeks of cutover, we had 450 technical questions that the AI deflected by itself. So 93% of the technical questions the AI handled. So the
Wow.
cutover is quite seamless, right? So these are some of the practical ways that people are, utilizing and seeing it outside of just 24/7 support for franchisees.
Yeah, which in and of itself is plenty, but doing like a technology cutover, you and I probably had to talk about that. Maybe we should start launching people with client tethers. We roll them over using
Absolutely.
Easy Assist.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, but the value of that though, of not having to field so many technical questions, because often when you're doing a technology cutover like that, the home office staff is only maybe moderately trained, or there aren't enough people to handle 450 questions in, let's say, the first week. That makes the FBCs all get just buried in minutia, and they can't do any of the other things they need to do. So
Absolutely.
that's an incredible case study. Where are some other areas? So if I'm a franchise brand, right? So I'm trying to figure out how can I create more scale. Every franchise brand operates with a skeleton crew. We all know that because royalty revenue isn't sufficient in many cases to really staff the way they wish they could. So aside from general Q&A, technology cutovers, where are some other areas that you're seeing franchise brands really leverage the power of, Easy Assist, AI in general?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? When we look at it from a meta perspective for franchising, and we were welcomed in, so we've been just sponges, just absorbing how this business model works, and we've been at every trade show, and we kind of see the patterns of how whether you're an emerging brand or an established brand, things are evolving. When we entered about 3 years back, it was all growth, right? We had come out of the pandemic. There was a lot of interest in franchising. There was new, younger folks getting into franchising. So growth, growth, growth. we now are seeing over the past, I would say 6 to 9 months, much more focus on profitability, right? It's like, okay, great, we grew, but that's not always great if your ducks are not in the row, you've not scaled up your system properly, you're not looking at, maximizing AUV and really thinking about how to drive that local marketing to make that happen. Profitability becomes the top topic. So that's what's top of mind. And when you think about that right now, tons of opportunity with AI, right? The way we look at it, and it's funny, Dave, you talk about, we should, collaborate in terms of cutovers and things like that. The way we look at ourselves as an AI company is the universal interface across the tech stack, right?
Mhm.
The tech stack is amazing. Like there is powerful CRMs like ClientTether. There's FMS systems, your FranConnects, your Delight Trees, your Wovens, all of these great tools. You have your knowledge systems, you have your learning management system. We're astonished by the amount of great tech out there. The problem often is getting utilization out of that, right? There's almost always more value that you're able to deliver through ClientTether than people are making use of it. So through AI, from our lens, is like we want to be that universal interface that's allowing folks to extract value, not to be the CRM, FMS, et cetera, right? So that's the baseline.
Mhm.
But then once we took that approach, what became really interesting for us, right, and how we see our business is we do two things really well. We do data really well. We get integrations into all the data. We partner with folks like you. We're absorbing all of this valuable information. The other thing that's really important is the distribution, right? We are now
Mhm.
not only going to the franchisor and the franchisee owner, but all of their staff. Every single person at a location has access to the AI to whatever channel, properly access controlled, etc. Now, if you have that data and distribution, what can AI do for you is the question, right? And so for us, the pathway in 2026, which aligns with what I think franchising is right now, is going from answers to actions, and then from actions to automations, right? That's the agentic kind of roadmap. I'm happy to break that down a little bit. So far, AI for answers, everybody kind of gets. We're used to ChatGPT, we're used to Perplexity. We ask questions, we get an answer. It has access to information, it's pulling it, it's summarizing it. It might even cite it, right? Which is important.
Right.
Now, the second part of it is can we now start to get it to do actions for us, where it's not
Mhm.
just a pull, but a pushback into that tech stack, right? Where you're telling it some information, you're giving it some rules or guardrails, and it's
Mhm.
executing work for you. So ChatGPT suddenly has hands and legs and can start to help you out. The workflows and the automation is the full embodiment of what agentic potential is, right? Where you have this wicked smart employee, think about them as this EA or chief of staff that every employee in the organization suddenly has. You've given them some instructions, they're very capable and they get to do that. But now you're going to cluster these actions, right? So let's take marketing. I'm going to cluster a bunch of marketing actions that I need help with. Things like going through all of my local reviews, right? My Google reviews, my reputation management. Can I have actions around that? Can I have actions around compliance? Can I have actions around unit level performance tracking where I look at KPIs and
Mhm.
start to do reporting? And that's the huge opportunity right now. It's become easier than ever to start to build some of these agents, but the difference is we're not doing it by building data lakes anymore, right? Where you historically had to do a lot of effort to bring all of this data into the central data warehouse or data lake, which takes months to build and then even harder to manage. Where the technology is right now with things like MCP protocol, which I'm happy to get into, we can now go to source and execute these actions and workflows that can drive value across that value chain, right? So
Mhm.
that's the high level. But Dave, what comes to mind for you in terms of value that you think franchise owners can see, and happy to get into that.
No, no, that was a perfect way to lay it out. Transitioning from, and guys, I'll just take us all back a step. Everybody's aware of AIs for answers, right? Like I've got my kids use AI. My son's like, Dad, I was talking to Chat GPT. They almost people are starting to get into this culture of like I'm having a conversation with a thing or a person, but it's that part we're all very familiar with, and I hope you've all adopted that big time in your lives. But transitioning from getting answers to taking actions, that's a pretty big transition. And it requires a lot of trust. Like the logic layers have to be sound, the tech has to be sound so that the AI can make good decisions and create good actions. Now, creating a singular tube or like a funnel that focuses on just actions in this little channel is great, but that's where AI think that the new shift is coming. And forgive me for rewording what you just told us, but if you can start to think in terms of what similar or like or related actions can an AI do, you can actually now create agentic AI that's going to now be able to make multiple actions happen across this cluster of tasks, right? So I would love to hear some examples. Like where have you guys seen some major lifts, some major impact as you're rolling out agentic AI across similar or like-minded tasks that are often kind of tedious in franchising?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that call out is important, Dave, and I will call out that, that is the funnest but the trickiest part of all of this, the data and the integrations and being able to tap into it live to enable actions. I have the benefit of, I have the pleasure rather of talking about all of this, but have the benefit of having my co-founder and CTO Gabe on the team, who's a PhD in machine learning, right? He was part of the Microsoft Bing core relevance engine team. And so it is deep IR, it is deep ML that enables all of this and underpins it, but the goal is to make it as simple as possible. So let's talk about some use cases that are emerging, right? I mentioned profitability. What does that really mean? How cool would it be if you as a franchisor could talk to an AI, easy or otherwise, where you're saying, hey, AI, I'd like to monitor these 10 different KPIs from a unit level perspective. Please find that information directly for me from a sales perspective from ClientTether, from a compliance perspective from FranConnect, from a scheduling perspective from Woven, whatever it is. Track all of that directly from source, compare it against the benchmark I've set for best practice in my ops manual. Anytime one of those KPIs dips below a certain level, send an automated message to that unit's specific performance coach and their VP of Ops. Let them know that this is they're trending below the benchmark. But not only that, give them recommendations on the next steps that they should make to partner with this franchise operator to coach them to succeed. You save that as a workflow, hit play, and it executes hundreds and hundreds and times over across your units, right? How powerful could that be? That is one of the most emerging ones. Happy to pause there if there's questions on that, but there's a couple of others I can highlight as well.
No, no, well, actually, I do want to pause there because what you're describing is something that I think it scares some people because, some folks might say, well, I'm a franchise business coach. I'm supposed to be monitoring that. And so this AI is going to start replacing my job. But I want to stop there and say AI's been out forever, guys. Like I was in the language industry and we were rolling out AI and cat tools and everyone was freaking out like, oh, machine translations. What actually happens though is this tedious work that everyone was doing of like manually translating, tedious stuff that no one was probably ever going to read. It shifted into machines doing that, and then humans were editing. Humans were thinking. Humans were not
Absolutely.
doing repetitive tasks. So these franchise business coaches that might be concerned by this, frankly, you should be cheering because one, we all know there aren't enough of you. You know that as well as we do, and two, your time is much better spent looking at people who are maybe above or below the benchmarks, and then figuring out if they're above, what are they doing differently, and how do I replicate that? And if they're below, what are they doing, and how do we correct that?
Yeah,
But now you're spending all your time doing what you wish you could do all day long. It's actually going to elevate the role and give you more time to work on what's most important. That
100%.
actually moves the needle, right? That's how I see all of this is how do we get people out of the minutia so they can focus their energy on where they're going to really make an impact?
Yeah, it's a great point, and FPCs are kind of our closest allies in all of this, right? We're
Sure.
building for them. It's not to replace them in any shape. It's think about that FPC that I spoke to an FPC recently at a brand that was one FPC to 195 units, right? How are we coaching at that scale? Almost impossible. So now with these insights, you're now at least armed to do it. And the other side of the equation is we talk to FPCs all the time where they are doing this on ChatGPT or Claude or something. So they're finding ways to take extracts and reports painstakingly out of ServiceMinder, out of Pokemos, out of all of these different, Home Depot as a supplier, the reports that they generate, push that all into ChatGPT or a Claude, do some analysis, painstakingly find this information. But we're at a 2026, I use tools like signal monitoring that I just feed it some information and it's telling me in the right time, the right place, information that I need, and I'm able to take the next best action on it, right? So this is just a natural evolution of where things should go, and so I think this will amplify what FPCs are able to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, that's one use case. You mentioned you have a couple of others, so I'd love to dive into a couple of other use cases with
Yeah,
you.
let's make it, on the operational side, right? We had a really fun conversation with a gelato brand that we're just onboarding right now. They're a growing gelato brand in Canada. They one of the things that's really unique about them is they have about 300 different flavors that they have to rotate through, right? And it's gelato, so you're kind of fresh producing it every couple of weeks, and the inventory management around that is really hard. So they went down this journey of building this whole using an app builder, building a whole ERP type system where there's a place to log all of the ingredients. There's a place to report on consumption. There's POS tools that it kind of links into to understand how much people have ordered, all to kind of understand how much we need to produce in what cadence, etc. Right? Think about this as a gelato brand owner. They've found a market niche. It's working. The marketing is amazing. There's franchisees that are really excited, and you want to scale from like 20 to 50. But if you can't scale production, how is that sustainable, right? Now, with AI, what could you do here? You could go and have the AI directly look at your Stripe data. So it's looking at that transaction data, what's happening, making sense of, trends, patterns, best in class performance by the top tier units, etc. It's
Hmm.
going to now look at the inventory management system and look at live polls on how much do we have of every ingredient, track it against that Stripe data in terms of what are people ordering, the prediction around that, and start to make informed decisions where it's going to go to the franchisee and say, hey, franchisee, you've been selling a lot of this. Your inventory is low. You're going to run out in 6 days. Would you like me to reorder, yes or no? The user says yes, and it reorders it for them, right?
Hmm.
That's an actual workflow we're going to work through with this brand in the coming weeks and months. But that's a real example of, let's not talk support and all of this. This is real. How do I run my business more effectively? And AI can help that, right? So inventory management, all of that is a massive use case. And again, tapping into data that's there is just really hard to do that today. It's a lot of manual work. It's inconsistent. People
Hmm.
don't do it on time, and young staff, things of that nature that we're tackling with that one.
That's amazing. Well, and again, we go back to the limited resource models within franchising. AI is not replacing anybody. It's just filling the gaps that already exist, right? Most brands,
Exactly.
they don't have a comptroller in place who can do the analysis like that. And people can, right? You and I could. We could look at spreadsheets and we could figure out like I can see a trend here, but
Yeah.
having to have somebody manually update the data, then manually analyze the data, then manually make decisions on the data, and then communicate manually. I mean, it becomes completely out of scope of what people can do when that same person at a franchise brand also has to go and coach the new onboarding people and right. So I love that example. Operationally, I mean, you could apply that same model into painting franchises, right? Like, oh, I need to figure out how much paint am I buying or should I be buying, or on average, like what's my
100%.
waste per job? Like all these metrics that people would love to know if you tie into first source data, like you're talking about, rather than the franchisor going through expensive machinations to create a data lake and host their own data lake in a cloud, an Azure or an AWS database or whatever they're doing, and then layer on top of that business intelligence. That tech stack cost and complexity just kind of dissolved, didn't it?
Oh,
As
yeah. And the key here is, it's not when you lay it like down like this, there's two things that come to mind, right? The optimistic part is like, oh, this is amazing, there's value. The pessimistic part, or the realist part rather, is okay, what does this all really mean? Am I building 100 agents? How am I deploying this? How am I managing it? Is this going to be a nightmare? How do you price this? Right. So
Mhm.
that's the other part of the equation that I think we need to address with all of this. And that third use case, by the way, which I'll link into this, is sales and growth. Right. That's the top of mind thing. You need to grow. You need to sell. You need to market. You use tools like ClientTether to make that happen. Now, could you do workflows against that? Right, where it's monitoring your deal flow against KPIs around where you expect it to be, how is your funnel doing, uh, you know, proactively giving you suggestions around what to do, looking at that top 20% of the units and abstracting the data away from anything that's personal, supplying the network with best practice that we've observed people doing these things on Client Tether hit their KPIs more often than people that don't, right? And
Mhm.
could we feed that back to franchisees, etc. But let's now bring that down to we're at a time where we don't need to go and manually program all of these different agents, right? you could conversationally talk to an Easy Assist today and tell it that, hey, Easy, I'd like to build this workflow where you do these steps. It will work through with you in conversation. It will give you the call outs at, pros and cons of doing it this way versus the other. Are you sure? What's the access control, etc. And it'll deploy that workflow for you, and then you manage that on the ticketing system, right? So I want people to understand that, right? This is not, when you think about agents, it seems like all of these agents that don't talk to themselves. How do you manage it? How do you actually build these things? Is it if-then statements? Do we need Zapier to do it, etc.? 2026, we're at a time now where you could conversationally build these workflows and deploy it and manage it, inclusive of things like dashboarding, right? Where I don't know if you've played with Metabase, Dave, but we've started to collaborate with Metabase to build dashboards within our AI experience, where conversationally, as you're building things out of ClientTether, I could say, okay, well, turn this into a pie chart for me. Okay, stack rank these two units, show me how they're performing year on year. Okay, great, save this visual as a view for me, and then I can come back and converge with that visual and get it to update, resave, etc., where I don't need to have one static dashboard. I now have a conversational visual interface where I can build graphs, talk to it, modify it, save it, and things of that nature. So we're getting into a really fun time where it's putting the power back into the operator, right? You know what you need to do, talk to it, figure it out, and execute, more importantly, not just data for the sake of it.
Yeah, that's incredible. And franchise, the beauty of that is, you and I both have MBAs, right? We can have maybe a sophisticated conversation to figure out what we want, but the AI can cut through all that clutter in academia. And if an just says, I need to learn how to make more money, an AI knows how to interpret that, and then it can go and do the analysis. You don't have to be highly sophisticated or well super educated. The AI
Exactly.
can close the gap, but you do need to be thinking about what you need. So I feel like there's a bit of a shift now in how we need to help educate people to engage AI. It's the when it first came out, everyone's like, how many jobs popped up where people were advertising they were prompt builders and all
Sure.
that stuff. Like the technical aspect of it, if you have a good partner like you guys, that's gone. But what are things franchise brands should be thinking about, or how should the franchise industry be considering training needs now around the use of AI so it's productive and also generating reliable results? Where sometimes not inside your system, but they've got 100 franchise owners with Claude and Grok and Perplexity and ChatGPT all doing different things. They're actually creating more chaos for themselves because they don't know how to harness this tool. Like how should franchise brands be teaching their franchise operators and their staff to use it properly?
Sure, I think that's one of the most important questions, right? I think with everything that we've built, the biggest learning for us over the last few years is the key to success with AI is actually good old change management, right? I think we often forget that. We've seen this in years of software where it's like, okay, you can build the best software, but if there's not an effective change management, there isn't training, there isn't coaching on how to use it, there isn't expectation setting on what it is, and there isn't iteration, it often fails, right? It can be amazing software, but it fails. It's the same paradigm. I would say, for franchisors, my biggest advice is, again, not everyone is going to need an easy assist today, right? I think
Mhm.
as they scale, they probably might, but they think about what your business needs today. What's the biggest pain point you want to solve? Is it a support problem? Great. Is it a compliance problem? Is it a local marketing problem? Is it a sales engine problem? Right? Start there. Then my advice is act fast, but in small kind of iterative steps, right? Where I don't think you can wait anymore. The era of kind of doing big bang deployments where you have all of AI figured out for your system, that is not the right way to think. I would almost suggest go to your FAC, go to franchisees that you can get good quick feedback on. Think about the pain points that matter the most. Bring them AI solutions, and you can do that by your own study, but certainly talk to vendors like us who would happily tell you that what's possible, art of the possible, really. Take it to the FAC, talk to them really quickly about what are the most imperative things that we want to bring to the business, and then take action on it as quickly as possible, right?
Yeah.
Small, bite-sized. This is an initiative we need to do to drive efficiency, to drive profitability, to drive compliance, whatever that might be. Act on it, and then the change management is imperative. So
Mhm.
what we do is extremely hands-on, right? That is probably the most hands-on part of our business, where once we've built that AI agent, we've plugged it into the ticketing, the integrations are all working. We do a multi-week effort where we open up 1 hour sessions, dozens of them to each of the brands, where we give the franchisor email, messaging, etc., where they push it down to all their franchisees and their staff, and they must self-select into one of those sessions. In that session, the first half an hour is let's demo this bot, right? Let's just show you the capabilities, the 15 different things that you can do. Because
Mhm.
as first is bias, right? Oh, I know what ChatGPT can do. That's probably what this is. No, let's expose you to what's possible.
Mhm.
The second half an hour is we're not leaving this call till you're onboarded, right? So pull out your phone, pull out your laptop. We're going to set you up. And if there's any technical issues, no bad questions here. We're going to stay back after the call to make sure you're fully set up. And then we reiterate that process again and again and
Mhm.
again over, a period of months. And then there's quarterly touch points, there's refreshers and all of that. That's what it takes, right? It's good old change management. It's
Yeah.
the AI can be fantastic, but that would be my number one advice to franchisors, right? Act fast, pick a use case and act fast with a vendor or yourself. That doesn't matter, but get feedback and then truly manage it. This is not a silver bullet you throw across the line and hope people figure it out. You
Yeah.
need to coach them through it. You need support. Yeah, it takes time.
Totally agreed. Yeah, love that. Well, you've got some great new things that are coming out. So I know as we're getting ready for IFA, it's that season, lots of new announcements and exciting things. You guys have got some new things that are rolling out that I think people ought to know about. Do you mind sharing a couple minutes about some of the new Agentic AI workflow builder? I think you might have referenced it previously, but I want to give everyone a chance to hear about like what's new with a group like you that's kind of riding the front of the wave of how AI can be deployed. What's exciting for you guys that's coming out?
Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity to share that. The way we kind of seen the last 3 years, when we came out and had our first brands come on, we were a support tool, right? We answered questions really well from across different sources. In the second iteration, 2025, we became a full-blown ticketing solution where we found it important to say like the franchisee should not be confused about where to go for support, and to get the most ROI, having all of the plumbing go through one channel, Easy Assist for ticketing streamlines the ROI, etc. So we focused on that. Now that we have that data and distribution and that ticketing system is enterprise grade, this is the year for us on workflow automation, right? Where we're saying, okay, we're going to truly now, the analogy I often like to use for franchisees, which is fun, is I want to be the Jarvis to their Iron Man, right?
Uh-huh.
When if you watch that movie, it's you're able to now conversationally talk to your AI and execute actions within all of those tools that help you run your business. And for the franchisor now to enable you by building workflows that are meaningful to running your business. We've been in beta with that tool with several of our current customers, and it's been really exciting to see all the places they've taken it. But that's what's coming, Dave. We'll be bringing that to market this year, introducing it at IFA, and then growing it over the course of the year. But if franchisors are now thinking about, okay, well, anything about support and ticketing, but also to do with, look, I just have these use cases that I want to help my franchisees with, whether that's profitability, the coaching side of it, or the compliance side of it. I just need to help franchisees and support them to execute their business objectives. That's where we start to partner, and we always take a high touch approach. So we'll help them build it. We integrate directly at source and help them run these actions and executions.
Mhm. That's pretty incredible. I mean, I was talking to a group and they were showing how well we're using AI now to build AI. So the AI is now like the way that you can leverage this, like you guys are building, is mission critical. Now, again, back to the point of I don't have to be highly sophisticated to use a tool like yours now that can help me get very sophisticated in how I run my business. I think that's incredible. Looking forward to
It's
seeing it.
that
I'd actually love to schedule time to look at it.
democratization of data and access to all of the tools, right? I think that's it is what it is right now, and I'm extremely excited. I think there's going to be a lot of value, in us partnering and looking at how we can leverage all of that meaningful data in ClientTether. Everyone I've spoken to that uses ClientTether just speaks highly of the quality of data that can be extracted from it. Now we can see what an interface to that can enable people to do.
Yeah, totally agreed. Well, Raphael, you're fantastic for taking time to walk through this with me. If somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, thank you. Well, our website is www.easyassist.com. You can certainly reach out from there, but Raphael at easyassist.com. I'm active on LinkedIn, so drop me a message, and I'd be happy to connect.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you, and as you certainly you and I will be in touch as you guys continue to grow. I'm excited to see what's next.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Appreciate the time, and always fun to chat with you.
Likewise.